How will I benefit from considering encoding semiotic sign action? We saw in Season 2 how the audience is central and not the creative. But yes, it is the creative who has the hard work to do. So why should you spend time even considering what you have to design or illustrate through a semiotic lens? Surely it is time wasted. Let us explore the benefits. Okay? In the context of visual communication, will it take too long to bother encoding semiotic signs? After all, none of those terms mean anything to creatives. The answer to the question is no, as it is just now mindfully tweaking what creatives already do during ideation and sketching. But creatives have a point with the terminology. The terms are obtuse. Semioticians, you know what is coming, off-putting to creative people. Over 2 seasons of Semiosis 101, we have covered iconic and lexical and symbolic representation. Each new Semiosis 101 episode brings in new viewers, so these terms will always be obtuse. Now, in Season 3, I am dropping 3 further terms into play: ream, dissent and argument, and qualisign, synsign and legisign. Whatever are we to do about explaining these terms? Do not press stop. Do not panic. We will now contextualize these semiotic terms into your creative practice. Just like during your ideation, there are things that are unknown and then known and provide you with insights to successfully answer a brief. These terms are just like that, nothing more. The ideas behind Peirce's obtuse terminology are what will be insightful. Trust me. So, to first recap on what viewers of Semiosis 101 already know from 2 seasons of episodes. Iconic, indexical and symbolic representation are the 3 levels of how a concept, meaning, can be semiotically represented. Ream, dissent and arguments are the levels of how interpretation is made from the semiotic representation. Qualisign, synsign and legisign are the levels that the form the semiotic sign takes to communicate. I'm still sensing incredulity out there. Let me put this in designer-centric terms. When you sketch a possible idea, what are you doing? You are trying to visually represent an idea you just thought of. As I say to my students who are reticent at ideation and want to rush to the Mac and Adobe to do design with their first idea. First, show me. Let's summarise. A creative gets an idea to answer the brief. That idea is floating around the synapses of their brain. The idea is genius, but how to visualise it? The creative makes a mark, a line, a shape, a colour. This begins to crudely resemble the qualities in the idea. This is sketched quickly on paper and is shown to another person. Remember, the creative has total belief their idea, now on paper, is genius. Surely everyone will see from a few lines their genius. The second person looks at the crude line scrawled on the paper representing the idea that the creative believes to be genius and says, I don't get it. Is the idea not genius? At this stage, it's too early to say. Is the sketching poor? It is a sketch, so maybe, or maybe not. Is the second person an idiot? Absolutely not. So where does the communicational problem lie? Let me quickly append some of Peirce's lowest level terms to this scenario before we move on to resolving this. The creative makes a mark, a line, a shape, a colour. Iconic representation. This begins to crudely resemble the qualities in the idea. Grammatic. This is sketched quickly on paper and is shown to another person. Qualisign. Let us unpack this. The crude sketch is comprised of individual marks, lines, shapes, colours, etc. Once these are perceived as something meaning-bearing, they begin to work semiotically. Sign action has been triggered by the act of perception of someone else. As the creative, you know those marks do bear meaning, otherwise you would not have bothered. You have used iconic representation to try to encode meaning in a few crude lines. These lines suggest familiarity to qualities and resemblances of what defines the idea in your head. The second person cannot open your head and look into what you are thinking, so is reliant on the sketch and its iconic representation to try to understand. They see the sketched lines, these crude patterns suggest a probable interpretation based on their own lived experiences, not the lived experience of the creative. The second person sees the sketch, tries to interpret something from it based on the possibility of something they may have encountered before, Grammatic. They, in this scenario, then say, I do not get it. They see the line suggest some basic meaning, iconic. They have tried to find that basic meaning, Grammatic, but how it has been presented is a sticking point in a successful interpretation. A qualisign, synsign, and legislign are the levels of visual agency to ensure the meaning-bearing elements are perceived and successfully interpreted. Admit it, you thought I was going to say that the paper was the qualisign. A qualisign is Peirce's term to describe the lowest level of visual agency that is nothing more than visual qualities. What I've just described above is Peirce's lowest classification that a semiotic sign can take. An idea that is sketched with basic levels of meaning that are only represented as possible visual qualities to something that someone may find familiar. This is sign 1 in Peirce's 10 sign classifications. More on these next month. A first sketch to show what you mean is obviously something that is a first draft. It needs further refinement. This is how semiosis at the lowest level of visual representation begins to work. You have all done this scenario and heard, I do not get it. You do not give up, you refine, you resketch, and you improve your visual communication. Every time you resketch or select something else to communicate what you mean, you are crafting your iconic representation to enhance how someone else will understand, Grammatic, what you are trying to visually communicate. As you refine your ideas and people begin to understand that this is that indexical representation, up to this now means that symbolic representation, their interpretations move from a possible meaning, Grammatic, to a proposed meaning, Dyson, to an actual meaning, argument. As the semiotic representation of the concept to be visually communicated becomes more assured, and that its interpretation becomes more confident, the agency of how this is achieved, polysign, synsign, legislign, is also semiotically strengthened. Semiosis is a process. Encoding semiotic signs with meaning bearing is not a manufacturing process. The audience's understanding is conditional. So, semiotic sign action, semiosis, is a framework to improve the effectiveness for successful visual communication. Applying semiosis maps to the creator's existing ideation practice. You are already doing it, in parts, blindly, and not very well, as it is new to you. Boom! A mic drop moment. Was Peirce thinking of creators when he came up with his sign action theory? Absolutely not. That would be absurd. Remember, he was a philosopher, a founder of pragmatism, a theorist, a mathematician, and a great thinker, but his language is obtuse. Today's episode has taken me personally years to think about what he meant and how it can map to creative ideation. To explain it in designer-centric context, I have had to consider how true am I being to his theory compared to how can his thinking enhance visual communication practice? How did I even begin to go from obtuse theory into practical application? We all owe a debt of gratitude to two information scientists who, in a 2009 academic paper, analysed graffiti through a Peircean lens. As we end this episode on semiotic ideation, I have put Peirce's obtuse language into the context of sketching out the first idea during ideation. This is not only an example of how to understand the theory, but also serves as a simile to how semiosis is a flowing process of meaning making and not a manufacturing process of making signage. Just as your first idea is not your solution to a client's briefing problem, sorry students, get ideating more, applying semiosis flows through all you create. Semiosis goes further. Just as your creative outcomes go out into the world beyond your creative control, so does how your audience reacts to your work. In next week's episode, we will pull all these flowing streams together. Do not panic if you do not get it yet. Thanks for watching. Check out the other Semiosis 101 episodes, like and share them with your friends. And hit the bell and subscribe buttons to be notified when next week's free Semiosis 101 episode is published. You can also follow Semiosis 101 on the socials for updates. It is at Semiosis 101 on Instagram and Threads. See you all again next week for more Semiosis 101 to help illustrators and designers to enhance your visual communication skills.